She walked into a store with an empty basket and begged for flour. The shopkeeper didn't just say no, he humiliated her in front of the entire town. Then a stranger appeared. He bought her everything she needed. He paid off her debts. He fixed her cabin. He taught her son how to drive a nail straight. But here's what she didn't know. That stranger was sent to take her land. He was paid $50 by the same company that had destroyed her husband. The same people who forged a loan, drove Marcus Moore to the edge, and may have caused his death. And now their agent was sleeping in her barn, eating at her table, and falling in love with the woman he was hired to ruin. The secret buried under her floorboard for 2 years is about to change everything. The lesson. This story carries one truth that will stay with you. The people who hurt us and the people who save us sometimes wear the same face. What matters isn't whether someone has made mistakes. It's what they choose to do when the truth comes out. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing to build forward instead of burning everything down. The meaning. Eliza's story is for everyone who has ever felt too proud to ask for help, too broken to trust again, or too afraid to let someone in after being let down. It reminds us that survival alone is not the same as living, that pushing everyone away keeps you safe, but it also keeps you empty, and that the bravest thing a wounded heart can do is not to harden forever, but to open one more time. If Eliza's courage made you feel something, hit that like button. It takes 1 second, but it means the world. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have forgiven Caleb? I genuinely want to know. If someone in your life needs to hear that it's okay to trust again, share this with them. And subscribe with notifications on so you're here the next time we tell a story that just might change the way you see your own. The wicker basket in Eliza Moore's hands weighed less than half a pound, yet it carried everything she had left of her pride. She stood on the frozen boardwalk outside Pritchard's Dry Goods and tried to remember what courage felt like. November wind cut through her threadbare shawl and found every hole the last 2 years had worn into her life. Medicine Bow's main street stretched before her in both directions, rutted mud frozen into hard ridges, and not a single soul on that street was going to help her. She knew that, had known it for months. But Noah was home. 6 years old, with his father's dark hair and hollows beneath his eyes that no child should carry. This morning she had given him the last of the cornmeal mush and told him she would bring back something good for supper. She had promised. Eliza pushed through the door. The brass bell above the frame rang out bright and cheerful, mocking in its warmth. Inside, the store smelled of coffee beans and tobacco, and the particular kind of plenty that comes from shelves lined full. Mrs. Henderson stood near the fabric bolts, running her fingers across a length of blue calico. The Rollins boys waited near the candy jars for their mother's weekly order. Old Timothy Marsh pretended to examine a row of tinned goods near the back wall, though everyone in town knew Timothy could not read the labels. All of them looked up when Eliza entered. She walked to the counter, set the empty basket down, met Samuel Pritchard's eyes with what remained of her dignity, and said the words she had rehearsed all the way into town. "Mr. Pritchard, I need flour and beans on account. Just enough for the week. I have laundry work promised by Friday." Pritchard did not lower his voice. He raised it. 3 months, Mrs. Moore. 3 months you have owed me and not a penny paid. I sell goods. I do not run a charity house for widows. The store went silent. Eliza felt every pair of eyes settle on her like stones dropped one by one onto her shoulders. Mrs. Henderson's hand froze on the calico. The Rollins boys stared. Timothy Marsh set down his tin and did not pick it up again. Heat climbed Eliza's neck and burned across her cheeks. She kept her voice level. "I am not asking for charity. I am asking for time. The Hendersons have promised me work. Promises do not pay bills." Pritchard leaned forward, his bulk pressing against the counter's edge, and something in his expression shifted, something calculated. Then he added a line that landed differently than the rest. If you truly cared about that boy, you would sell that land. I hear there is a buyer offering a fair price. Not someone, not maybe. A buyer. Specific. As though Pritchard already knew who was offering and how much. Eliza filed that away the way a woman alone learns to file away every detail that feels wrong. But in the moment, the pain of his words was louder than the strangeness of them. She picked up the empty basket, turned slowly, refusing to rush despite the burning need to flee. The other customers parted to let her pass. Not one of them spoke. Not one of them offered. Their silence was louder than anything Pritchard had said. The brass bell jingled again as she stepped outside, bright and cheerful, a sound for happy people entering a place where they belonged. Eliza Moore did not belong anywhere today. She walked. Mrs. Henderson caught up to her on the boardwalk, fabric samples clutched to her chest. Sympathy spread across her round face like something applied. Eliza, I heard what happened in there. I am so sorry. If you need anything at all, I am fine. Thank you. About the laundry work. Mrs. Henderson glanced back toward the store and lowered her voice. My husband says we need to wait until spring. Money is tight for everyone, you understand. Of course. Money was always tight. Just never quite tight enough to stop the Hendersons from buying new calico, or the Rollins family from ordering peppermint sticks, or any of them from filling their baskets while Eliza's hung empty. I understand. Good day. She walked the length of Medicine Bow's main street. Past the small whitewashed church where they had buried Marcus 2 years ago, his pine coffin lowered into frozen ground while she stood holding a 4-year-old Noah and wondering how a person was supposed to keep breathing when the world had caved in. Past the boarding house where she had taken in washing until Mrs. Yates decided a widow without a man's protection might give the establishment the wrong character. Past the livery stable and the land office and all the familiar landmarks of a life that had been shrinking steadily for 24 months. At the edge of town, where the frozen street gave way to open prairie and nothing, Eliza stopped. The basket dangled from her hand. The wind bit harder. Beyond the last buildings, the land rolled away in endless waves of brown grass and sage, broken only by the dark wall of mountains to the west. Beautiful and brutal, the way everything about Wyoming territory was beautiful and brutal. Marcus had brought her here 7 years ago, full of dreams about land and livestock, about building something that mattered. She had followed him from St. Louis because she loved him, and because his dreams were big enough to fill the spaces her own caution left empty. Those dreams had broken one by one. Drought, disease, cattle dying, crops failing. And then Marcus himself, thrown from a horse, neck snapped, leaving her with a 6-month-old son and debts she had spent 2 years trying to climb out from under. She thought about leaving, not dying, just surrendering, packing Noah and the nothing they owned and heading east to wherever widows went when the West finished chewing them up. But east required money she did not have. Staying required food she could not buy. She had neither, and the ground beneath her feet had never felt less solid. Ma'am. The voice came from behind her, low and rough, like creek gravel tumbling in slow water. Eliza turned. A man stood 10 feet away, tall and broad-shouldered, hat pulled low against the wind, wearing a coat that had seen years of hard use, and boots filmed with trail dust. He stood with his hands loose at his sides, and something in his stillness made her look closer. His face was weathered, late 30s maybe, lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth, the kind that came from squinting into sun and wind for more years than most men managed. Not handsome, too rough-edged for that word, but solid, steady, the kind of face you would trust to hold a rope or speak the truth even when the truth was hard. I am fine, Eliza said automatically. Thank you. The man did not move, did not smile, did not offer the hollow sympathy she had come to dread. Saw what happened in there. He nodded toward Pritchard's store. Was not right. Heat flooded her cheeks again. Of course he had seen. Another stranger witnessing her humiliation. Public entertainment. I do not need pity. Not offering pity. Something in his tone made her pause. No warmth in it, no condescension. Just flat truth, spoken by a man who seemed to deal in nothing else. Then, what are you offering? The words came out sharper than she intended, carrying all the anger she could not aim at Pritchard or Mrs. Henderson or any of the people who had watched her beg and done nothing. The stranger glanced at her empty basket. When he looked back at her face, his eyes were brown and steady and held nothing she could name as threat. Ride with me, he said. I will put food on your table tonight. Eliza stared at him. The wind whipped her skirt against her legs and carried the smell of sage and distance and winter coming fast. I do not accept charity from strangers. Not charity, transaction. He pulled a worn leather pouch from his coat pocket and hefted it. Coins clinked in the cold air. I need someone to show me grazing land around here. Creek water, soil quality, what grows and what does not. You know this territory. I know it. Then you have got something I need. He nodded toward the edge of town where a sturdy buckskin horse stood ground-tied near the water trough. 1 hour of your time, maybe 2. In exchange, we stop at that store, fill your basket, and I pay cash. He paused. Pritchard is an ass. You have got knowledge I need, and I have got money you need. Simple enough? Simple. Nothing in Eliza's life had been simple since Marcus fell from that horse. But Noah's empty stomach did not care about complexity. Where are you headed? She asked carefully. Wherever there is land worth buying. Been riding through looking for a place to settle. Heard there is good water out toward Deer Creek. Her breath caught. Deer Creek. Her land. The homestead she could not sell and could not quite lose. I know Deer Creek. I live there. Something shifted in the stranger's expression. Satisfaction, maybe, or recognition. Then you are exactly who I need to talk to. 1 hour, Eliza said. You want to see the creek land? I will show you. In exchange, you fill my basket. Flour, beans, salt pork, coffee. Cash payment, no credit. Fair enough. He extended his hand. She looked at it. Work roughened, scarred across the knuckles. Honest calluses from years of rope and leather and labor. After a moment, she took it. His grip was firm but careful, the handshake of a man who knew his own strength and chose not to press. They walked back to Pritchard's store together. Eliza could feel eyes tracking them from behind curtains and through windows. She could practically hear the gossip already forming. Let them talk. Noah needed to eat. Inside, Pritchard's entire demeanor shifted the moment he saw the stranger standing behind her. Money had that effect on men like Pritchard. What can I do for you, sir? All warmth now, all willingness. Lady here is helping me find land. In exchange, I am buying her supplies. Flour, beans, salt pork, coffee to start. Whatever she needs. The stranger added potatoes, onions, canned tomatoes, bacon, sugar. More than Eliza had asked for. More than she had seen in her kitchen in months. Pritchard gathered everything with smooth efficiency, smiling now, treating Eliza like an old friend instead of the woman he had publicly humiliated 10 minutes ago. But it was his eyes Eliza watched. When the stranger laid cash on the counter, Pritchard's gaze did not go to the money first. It went to Eliza. Not the look of a merchant watching a customer pay. The look of a man watching prey slip the trap. She did not understand it yet, but she filed it away. Outside, the stranger secured a wooden crate of supplies to his saddle with practiced hands. You ride? Not in a long time. Horse will carry double. Step on my boot. I will pull you up. Eliza hesitated. Accepting his offer in principle was one thing. Climbing onto a horse with a man she did not know and riding out to her isolated homestead was another. But the crate of food sat there, undeniable. And she had given her word. She took his hand. His pull was strong and sure, lifting her easily behind the saddle. She settled and gripped his coat just enough for balance. No more than necessary. Hold on, he said, and nudged the horse forward. They rode out of Medicine Bow at a walk, past the watching townspeople, past the church and the livery, and all the familiar landmarks of Eliza's shrinking world. Nobody spoke to them. Nobody waved. They just watched. And Eliza knew that by nightfall the story would be told and retold and judged. The widow Moore, riding off with a stranger, no better than she should be. She did not care. Her son was going to eat tonight. That was enough. Caleb Rowan had seen plenty in 15 years on the trail. Cattle dying by hundreds under a white sun. Ghost towns where the wind played tricks through empty windows. Men swinging from cottonwood limbs with their boots still on. He had seen things that stained the backs of his eyelids so that even sleep offered no escape. But nothing haunted him quite like the way this woman gripped an empty basket, as though it were the last thing keeping her upright. She sat behind his saddle now, one hand holding his coat with a grip that measured itself carefully. Not clutching, not clinging, just enough contact to stay aboard and not one fraction more. Caleb noticed. A woman who economized even her dependents had been let down hard and learned the lesson deep. The buckskin moved at a steady walk, hooves crunching over frozen ground. Medicine Bow fell behind them and the prairie opened up, vast, quiet. The kind of quiet that made a man's thoughts too loud. Caleb felt the letter in his breast pocket. Not a letter exactly, more like a set of instructions written on good paper in a firm hand. He had read it enough times to know the words without looking. $50 to ride through, look at land, write a report, find the pressure points. Everyone has got a price. That was what the man in Cheyenne had said. Caleb had not argued. $50 was good money, more than a month's wages on the trail, and all he had to do was ride into Medicine Bow, scout the Deer Creek country, and report back on which small holders might be willing to sell and which ones needed convincing. He had not asked what convincing meant, had not wanted to know. Sitting on this horse with a starving woman at his back, and her boy waiting at home with hollowed cheeks and two old eyes, he wished to God he had asked. Wished he had thrown that $50 back across the desk and walked out. But he had taken the money. It sat in his saddlebag like a stone he could not set down. "How far?" he asked over his shoulder. 3 miles northwest. Follow the creek line." They rode in silence. The land around them was good. Caleb could see that even under the brown of late autumn. The soil here had depth. Grass grew thick where it had not been grazed down. The mountains to the west broke the worst of the winter wind, and the creek lines promised water that would run even in dry years. Prime country. Worth every penny the railroad would pay to run track through it. Worth enough to destroy a widow and her boy if the wrong people got their hands on it. They crested a low rise, and Caleb saw the homestead below. A line of cottonwoods marked Deer Creek's winding path, their bare branches reaching up like gray fingers. Beyond the trees, a cabin sagged under a roof that had been patched too many times with materials too poor. A corral fence lay half-collapsed. A chicken coop leaned at an angle that suggested one strong wind would finish it. Fields stretched away on both sides, gone entirely to weed and wild grass. 2 years of one woman trying to hold everything together with nothing but her own 2 hands. It was written in every broken board, every collapsed rail, every square foot of ground that had given up producing, because nobody had the strength left to ask it to. Caleb's chest tightened. "Not much to look at," Eliza said behind him. Her voice was carefully flat. "Seen worse," Caleb said, and meant it. But what he was really looking at was the creek, running clear even now in November, and the lay of the land that would drain well in spring rains, and the southern exposure that would warm early and hold heat late. An expert's eye saw what the surface tried to hide. This land was good. The cabin door opened as they rode into the yard. A boy stepped out, small and thin in a coat 2 sizes too large, dark hair sticking up, eyes cautious but bright. He looked at Eliza first, then at Caleb, and his small face went through a series of calculations no 6-year-old should have to make. Who is this man? Is he safe? Did Mama bring food? Mama. Eliza slid from the horse before Caleb could offer help. "It is all right, Noah. This is Mr. Rowan. He has brought us some supplies." Noah's eyes went to the crate tied to the saddle, and something happened in his face that Caleb was not prepared for. Wonder. Pure, desperate, heart-cracking wonder. The boy stared at that crate of food like it was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen, and his expression was so full of hope and so afraid of disappointment that Caleb had to turn away. Because he had seen that look before, on Sarah's face, his daughter, 4 years old, dark-haired, laughing. The morning she got her first doll, she had looked at it with exactly that same mix of wonder and disbelief, as though good things might vanish if she blinked. Sarah, who was dead now, buried in Texas dirt next to her mother Emma, while Caleb was 200 miles away driving somebody else's cattle, and did not even know they were sick until he came home to 2 wooden crosses and a neighbor who could not meet his eyes. Caleb busied himself untying the crate. His hands were steady, his eyes were not. "Thank you, sir," Noah said. His voice was small and precise, carrying a dignity that should not have belonged to a child. "You are welcome." Caleb carried the crate inside. The cabin was 1 room, rope bed in the corner, rickety table and 2 chairs, a cupboard with empty shelves, a fireplace that held nothing but cold ash. Everything spoke of absence, of a life stripped down to its bones and still losing weight. He set the crate on the table and did not comment. "Show me your land," he said to Eliza, "the grazing areas, water sources. Then I will help bring in firewood before I go." It was not part of their agreement. Eliza opened her mouth, probably to refuse, then closed it. What was the point of pride when the man had already seen everything? They walked the perimeter of her 20 acres. Caleb asked questions about soil quality, drainage, previous crops. Eliza answered with a precision that surprised him. She knew her land, knew the water table depth at different points, knew which fields had produced wheat and which had been better suited for hay, knew the growing season down to the week. This woman was not ignorant. She had not failed because she was stupid or lazy. She had been abandoned by circumstance and crushed by debt and left to manage alone what should have taken 2 people in fair weather to build. Caleb volunteered to chop wood. He found dead cottonwood along the creek bank and split it with the axe from his saddlebag, falling into the rhythm the way he always did when his mind needed quieting. Swing, split, stack. The wood opened clean under the blade, and each piece was one more night of warmth for the boy who had said, "Thank you, sir," with eyes like Sarah's. The job was simple. Look at the land, write the report, collect the money. 3 steps. And he had done harder things in his sleep. But the woman's face when her boy said those words, that was not in the 3 steps. That was not supposed to happen at all. By the time he finished, the woodpile was bigger than it had been in months. Eliza stood watching him with an expression he could not quite read. Gratitude, maybe. And beneath it something harder. The wariness of a woman who had learned that help always came with a price tag, even if the price was not printed until later. "Thank you," she said, "for all of this." Already thanked me. Showed me the land, answered my questions. Fair trade. He gathered his horse's reins. "If you need anything, leave word at the livery in town. I will check there." He swung into the saddle and rode out before she could say more. The cabin's glow fell behind him. Noah's voice carried faintly on the wind, excited, talking fast. Something about peaches. Caleb rode toward Medicine Bow in the gathering dark with $50 in his saddlebag and something heavier in his chest. This land was everything the man in Cheyenne wanted. Good water, good soil, good position for the railroad. His report would set wheels turning that would crush Eliza Moore and her boy flat without even noticing. That night in the boarding house, Caleb sat before a blank sheet of paper. The report was overdue. He picked up the pen, dipped it, and wrote in a steady hand, "Deer Creek property suitable for discussed purposes." He stared at the words. Then he drew a line through them and wrote beneath, "Require additional time for survey." He folded the paper, did not send it, not yet. Through the thin wall he could hear May Tattersall's boarding house settling in the cold. Somewhere a door closed. Wind found the gaps in the window frame and whistled thin and sharp. Caleb sat with the folded paper in his hands and the $50 in his bag and thought about a boy's eyes full of wonder, and a woman who gripped an empty basket like it was the last solid thing in the world. He had done plenty of hard things in 15 years on the trail. Walking away from this was going to be the hardest. The first snow fell on Medicine Bow like a warning. Winter does not negotiate, and Eliza Moore was running out of time to make a deal. 1 week passed after the stranger's visit. Eliza returned to the rhythm that had kept her and Noah alive for 2 years, washing clothes for what few families would hire her, mending shirts and trousers for pennies, counting every coin and measuring every handful of flour as though arithmetic alone could hold back starvation. But Caleb Rowan's food had changed things. The cupboard held provisions now, real provisions, flour and beans and salt pork and coffee, enough that Noah ate full meals for the first time in months. His cheeks carried color again. He ran instead of walking. He laughed at the chickens instead of watching them with the quiet calculation of a child deciding which one they could afford to eat next. Small mercy, enormous difference. Eliza had not seen Caleb since the afternoon he rode away from the homestead. But May Tattersall mentioned him when Eliza came to town to deliver mending. "That stranger of yours asked after you again?" May said from behind the boarding house desk where she kept her ledger and a loaded Derringer in the same drawer. Not the bad kind of asking, the kind where a man wants to know you are managing. May was 62 years old, with iron-gray hair, and a past she referred to only as my saloon days, which covered a period of roughly 20 years and several thousand miles between Missouri and Wyoming. She had the sharpest eyes in Medicine Bow and the loosest tongue, which made her either the best or worst person to know depending on what you needed. "Something about him feels familiar," May added, squinting at the ceiling as though the answer might be written on the plaster. "But I cannot place it." Eliza thanked her for the information, and did not think about Caleb Rowan's steady brown eyes, or the careful way he had shaken her hand. She did not think about him when she fed the fire that night. She did not think about him when Noah asked if Mr. Rowan was coming back. She absolutely did not think about him when she lay in bed listening to the wind and the creek and the particular kind of silence that fills a cabin where one adult sleeps alone. Then the snowstorm came, and Caleb came with it. Eliza heard hoofbeats cutting through the white wall of falling snow and opened the cabin door to see a rider materializing from the storm like something conjured. Caleb sat his buckskin easy despite the cold, hat and shoulders layered with white. Behind him he led a second horse, a sturdy pack animal loaded with bulging saddlebags and what looked like tools wrapped in oilcloth. "Morning, Mrs. Moore." He touched his hat brim, and snow scattered from the gesture. "Mr. Rowan." Eliza kept her voice steady, though her pulse had jumped in a way she did not care to examine. "Was not expecting to see you again. Had business in the area. Thought I would check how you are managing with the weather." He looked past her to the cabin. "Mind if I come in out of this?" She should have refused, should have maintained the careful walls she had built around herself and Noah in the 2 years since Marcus died. But the snow fell harder by the minute, and the man's coat was crusted with ice, and she had been raised with manners even if poverty had stripped away most other comforts. Of course. "Coffee is hot." Caleb secured the horses under the lean-to, came inside, removed his hat, and stood holding it awkwardly in the small space. Noah appeared from the corner where he had been practicing letters on a slate, and his face lit up like sunrise. "Mr. Rowan?" "Morning, Noah. How are those chickens treating you?" "Good. They laid 2 eggs yesterday, even with the snow." Caleb accepted coffee, wrapped his hands around the cup, looked at Eliza with an expression that was serious but not unkind. "Been meaning to talk to you both," he said. Here it came, the real reason behind his kindness, the demand or proposition or expectation she had been waiting for since the moment he appeared. Nothing was ever truly free. About what? Been looking at land, like I said. Talked to folks in Medicine Bow and at the land office. Learned some things about your situation. Heat rose in Eliza's face. Of course he had heard the gossip, the widow who could not manage, the woman drowning in her dead husband's debts. What people say is not always true, did not say it was. Caleb set down his cup. But some of it is. You are 3 months behind on the bank payment. They are threatening to foreclose come spring if you cannot catch up. That is my business. It is, and I am not trying to pry. He leaned against the table, keeping his posture relaxed despite the tension Eliza was radiating like heat from a stove. But I told you I was looking to buy land. This land, he gestured toward the window, this is good land. Creek runs year-round. Soil is decent, close enough to town for supplies, far enough for privacy. Understanding came cold and bitter. You want to buy my homestead? No. The word came fast and firm. I want to help you keep it. Eliza stared. I checked with the bank, Caleb continued. Your debt is $200, but they are not trying to collect. They are trying to squeeze you into selling cheap. That is not the same thing. Someone is pressuring them, putting you in a corner so you will take whatever offer comes along. He pulled a folded paper from his coat. Been to the land office, talk to the bank. I am proposing a partnership. I pay off your debt, all $200 right now. In exchange, we work this land together. You know the territory and the growing seasons. I know cattle and building and how to make a homestead turn profit. We split everything equal. After 5 years, the land is yours free and clear. The cabin seemed to tilt. Eliza gripped the table edge. Why? The question came out raw. Why would you do this? You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Makes perfect sense. I need land and expertise. You need money and help. We both need a fresh start. He told her then about being hungry in a town that did not care 15 years ago. Someone fed him, did not ask questions, did not want anything back, just fed him. Been carrying that debt ever since, Caleb said. Figure it is past time to pay it forward. It was a good story, maybe even true. But Eliza had learned that good stories and full truth were not always the same thing. I need time, she said, to think about it. Take all the time you need. I will be at the boarding house through the week. After that, I am heading south to look at other properties. A deadline without saying so. Decide or lose the opportunity. He left behind the tools and blankets he had brought. A good saw, hammer, nails, rope, seed corn and beans, and wrapped in brown paper at the bottom, 2 wool blankets so thick and soft they must have cost a month's wages. Consider it investment in the partnership, he said at the door. Cannot work land with broken tools and thin blankets. I have not agreed to any partnership. I know. He met her eyes. But think about it. Really think. Winter is here. Spring planting is 4 months away. You are barely hanging on, and we both know it. After he left, Noah examined the tools with reverent hands. Look at this saw, Mama, and this rope. Eliza watched her son and felt the weight of decision pressing down. Every instinct built over 2 years of barely surviving screamed caution. Do not trust. Do not hope. Do not believe a stranger's promises. But those same instincts had left them nearly starving. That night, after Noah fell asleep, Eliza sat at the table with paper and pencil and wrote out terms, what she needed, what she would accept, what lines could not be crossed. Equal split of all profits. Her name on every legal document. Decision-making shared, with her having final say on anything involving Noah's safety and well-being. Separate sleeping quarters. A written contract, witnessed and recorded at the land office. The list grew. Her hand ached by the time she finished, but she had something concrete. Something that made the idea feel less like wild faith and more like business. 2 days later, she rode the old mule into Medicine Bow and climbed the boarding house stairs to room 6. Caleb opened the door almost immediately. I have thought about your offer, Eliza said. I have terms. She handed him the paper. He read through it carefully, his expression neutral until near the end. Then he looked up. These are fair, more than fair. He paused. But I have a concern with one point. Eliza stiffened. Here it was, the pushback. The crack in the offer that would reveal what he really wanted. This clause here, Caleb said, tapping the paper, where you have sole decision-making authority over Noah. If I am living on this land, investing my money and my labor, I will have some responsibility toward that boy whether we write it down or not. You cannot ask me to pour everything I have into this place and then shut me out of decisions that affect all three of us. It was the first time he had refused her anything. Eliza felt the negotiation shift from rescue to reality. This was not a man handing charity to a grateful woman. This was two adults with competing interests trying to find middle ground. She considered. He was not wrong. If Caleb was going to live and work alongside them, pretending he had no stake in Noah's daily life was dishonest. Shared input on daily matters, Eliza said carefully. My final say on anything affecting his safety or well-being. Caleb nodded. Fair. On one condition of my own, he added. We do this right. Legal contract, witnessed, recorded at the land office. I do not want you thinking I'm trying to cheat you or take advantage. Everything official and proper. I had already planned on that. Good. He extended his hand. Then we have a partnership, Mrs. Moore. She took it, firm grip, warm hand. The world shifted beneath her feet. They drew up the contract that afternoon at the land office. Mr. Hendrick served as witness and notary, his rheumy eyes moving between them with undisguised curiosity. News would spread through Medicine Bow by supper time. Let it spread. At the bank, Caleb paid her debt in full. $200. The teller stamped Eliza's receipt with a finality that made her throat tight. 2 years of drowning, and just like that, the weight lifted. They spent the rest of the day loading a rented wagon with supplies, lumber for repairs, glass for windows, feed for the chickens and the mule, flour and coffee and salt in quantities that made Eliza's head swim. This is too much, she said. It is investment. We are partners now. What benefits the homestead benefits us both. They drove the wagon out of town under the stares of every soul on the main street, and Eliza felt something she had not felt in 2 years. Not hope, exactly. Something closer to security, fragile, temporary, but present, real. Noah met them in the yard, eyes wide at the loaded wagon. Is all this ours? Ours, Caleb confirmed. That night, after Noah slept and the fire burned low, Eliza cleared a space in the cupboard for the last of the new supplies. Her hand struck something beneath the loose floorboard. She stopped, knelt down, pulled up the board. A yellowed envelope, Marcus's handwriting on the front. She recognized it instantly. He had left it on the table the morning of his last ride. She had found it that evening after they brought his body home, picked it up, read her name in his hand, and could not bring herself to open it. Whatever truth her dead husband had put to paper, she was not strong enough to face it. Not then, not in the months after, not in the years of scrambling to survive. She had shoved it under the floorboard and tried to forget it existed. Tonight she held it up in the lamplight, turned it over twice, felt the weight of folded pages inside. Then she put it back, pressed the board down flat. Not yet. But the envelope lay beneath her feet like a buried charge, counting down toward a truth that would change everything she believed about the man she had buried and the man she had just let through her door. Caleb Rowan knew how to raise a straight wall, but the wall of lies he was building between himself and Eliza leaned worse with every passing day. December came in hard and stayed hard. Temperatures dropped until the creek froze along its edges, and breath hung in the air like small ghosts. But the cabin was warmer now. Caleb worked from first light until the dark drove him inside, and the homestead was transforming under his hands. He replaced the rotted boards in the cabin floor, each new plank tight against the next until the draft from below stopped for the first time in years. He patched the roof with proper shingles instead of the scrap wood and oilcloth Eliza had been using. He hung a new door on iron hinges that let it close flush and true so that the wind no longer found its way through the frame. He worked with the particular focus of a man trying to build fast enough to outrun his conscience. Noah was his shadow. The boy appeared each morning with his coat buttoned to the chin and his eyes bright, ready to hand tools, hold boards, learn whatever Caleb was willing to teach. The hunger for guidance came off him like heat. Caleb found himself teaching without thinking about it. How to measure twice and cut once. How to read the grain of a piece of wood so the saw would follow it instead of fighting. How to coil rope in a flat spiral that would not tangle when you needed it fast. One afternoon, Noah tried to drive a nail and bent it sideways on the first swing. His face crumpled, tears threatened. "First nail is always crooked," Caleb said, keeping his voice easy. "What matters is the second one." Noah set another nail, squared up, swung carefully. The nail went in straight. The boy looked up with a grin that rearranged something deep in Caleb's chest. "I did it. You did." That evening after supper, Noah asked about Caleb's family. The question came the way children's questions always do, sudden and without warning. Landing on ground, the adults had been carefully stepping around. "Mr. Rowan, do you have any family?" Caleb set down his spoon. Across the table, Eliza's hand went still on her bowl. "Not anymore," he said carefully. "Did they die?" "Noah." Eliza's voice was sharp. "That is not polite. It is all right." Caleb met the boy's eyes. "Yes, they died. A long time ago. My wife, Emma, and my daughter, Sarah. Fever took them one winter when I was working a cattle drive in Texas. By the time I got home, they were already in the ground." The cabin went quiet except for the fire's crackle. Noah looked at Caleb with an expression far too old for 6. "My papa died too. He fell off a horse and broke his neck. I know. That is hard for a boy." It was. Noah's voice went small. "I do not remember him much anymore. Just pieces. His voice. How he smelled like tobacco and leather." "That is natural," Caleb said gently. "Memory works that way, especially when you are young. But the pieces you keep, those matter. They are yours, true and solid." "What was your daughter afraid of?" "Chickens." Caleb felt the word catch in his throat. "She was terrified of chickens, thought they were going to peck her eyes out. Made me hold her hand the whole time we collected eggs." Noah grinned. "I am afraid of spiders." Reasonable fear. Spiders are sneaky. So are chickens. Something broke open in the space between them. Not grief exactly. Something warmer and more dangerous. Connection. Eliza watched from across the lamplight, and Caleb saw her eyes go bright with tears she did not shed. She was thinking about Marcus, he knew. Thinking that her dead husband should have been the one teaching their son about nails and rope and what to do when the world bent sideways. Later, after Noah slept, they sat at the table with coffee between them. The fire burned low and the cabin felt solid around them for the first time. "Thank you," Eliza said. "For what you told him about memory?" "Just truth." Still, it mattered. She traced the rim of her cup and did not say more. But the silence between them had changed. It was no longer the silence of strangers working out terms. It was the silence of two people beginning to know each other in ways that contracts could not cover. Caleb went back to the lean-to that night and lay in the dark with his guilt like a third blanket. A letter had arrived at May's boarding house 2 days ago. He had ridden in to collect supplies, and May had handed it over without comment. The handwriting on the envelope was firm and familiar, and the wax seal bore an imprint he knew too well. He had read the letter alone. The words were blunt. "Need the report immediately. The railroad survey will be finalized by spring. If you cannot complete the assignment, I will send someone who can." Caleb had sat with that letter for an hour. Then he had written a reply. The words came hard, but he wrote them down. "The land is not suitable. Creek water is unreliable. Recommend looking further north. Every word a lie." The creek was reliable, the land was prime, but writing the truth would have been like signing Eliza's eviction. He sealed the letter and gave it to the postal rider, watched the man ride south toward Cheyenne carrying Caleb's lies, and wondered how long they would hold. He could not tell Eliza, not yet. Not when the partnership was new and fragile, and Noah was just beginning to trust him. The truth would destroy everything they were building. But every day the lie grew heavier. Days passed. The lean-to became a proper shelter under Caleb's hands. He reinforced the walls, chinked the gaps, built a small stove from stones and an old barrel. Not comfortable, but adequate. Proper enough that he could sleep there without freezing while maintaining the boundaries their agreement required. One afternoon, Eliza rode the mule into town to deliver mending and pick up a bolt of cloth May had set aside for her. She stopped at the boarding house and passed through the hallway near Caleb's room. The door was ajar. She did not enter, did not even slow her step, not consciously. But her eyes caught details the way a woman living alone learns to catch them. Caleb's coat draped over the chair, his saddlebag on the floor, and on the small table, a folded paper with an official-looking seal. She caught only a fragment, the words "Land Development" and a Cheyenne address. She filed it away and kept walking. It could mean anything. Caleb was looking to buy land. Of course he would have correspondence with land companies. Of course there would be papers with official seals. It meant nothing. But 3 days later, Eliza stopped at the land office on an errand, checking property tax records, making sure the partnership filing was in order. While Mr. Hendricks pulled her documents, she asked a question that had been sitting in the back of her mind like a stone in a shoe. "Mr. Hendricks, do you know anything about land development companies out of Cheyenne?" The old clerk looked up from his ledger. "A few of them. Biggest one working this area right now is Webb and Associates. Colonel Harlan Webb. Been buying up parcels along the proposed railroad route." He adjusted his spectacles. "Deer Creek is on his list, matter of fact." The air in the office went thin. "Has anyone asked you about that route recently?" Eliza kept her voice even. Hendricks consulted a second ledger, running his finger down a column of names and dates. "Matter of fact, your partner, Mr. Rowan, asked about the railroad survey maps. His first day in town." He looked up. "Before he met you." Eliza stood very still. The floor beneath her feet, which had been feeling steadier these past weeks, cracked clean through. She thanked Mr. Hendricks, walked out of the land office, stood on the boardwalk while Medicine Bow moved around her and felt the cold settle into her bones in a way that had nothing to do with November. Caleb Rowan had not come to Medicine Bow by chance. He had come looking for land along a railroad route. Her land. And he had asked about railroad maps before he ever laid eyes on her, before the store, before the empty basket, before the trade he had called simple enough. Everything he had done since that first afternoon took on a different shape: the food, the partnership, the $200, the tools and blankets and careful kindness, not generosity, investment, scouting, the slow, methodical work of a man positioning himself to take what he needed while pretending to give. She had been here before, standing in the wreckage of a man's promises, while the truth pulled itself out of the rubble piece by piece. Eliza rode home in the dark. Her mind was cold and clear and sharp as a blade. She would not cry. She would not rage. She would do what she had always done when the ground fell away beneath her. She would stand very still, find out exactly how deep the fall went. And then she would decide what to do about Caleb Rowan. Eliza Moore had been betrayed once by a dream. Marcus's dream of the West, of land and cattle, and a future big enough to fill the sky. She had followed that dream from St. Louis to Wyoming and watched it collapse into debt and desperation, and finally, a pine coffin lowered into frozen ground. She had sworn never to be betrayed by trust. She would never again hand her faith to another person and wait for them to drop it. And now, watching Caleb Rowan split wood in the yard with the easy confidence of a man who belonged there, she wondered what an oath was worth when the heart had already signed away what the mind refused to give. She waited until Noah was inside with his slate and letters. Then she crossed the yard to where Caleb stood, axe in hand, surrounded by split cottonwood. "Who is Colonel Webb, Caleb?" The axe stopped mid-swing. Caleb set it down slowly, like a man putting away a weapon, and turned to face her. His expression went through several things at once and settled on something she had not expected. Relief. "Where did you hear that name?" "The land office. Mr. Hendricks, you asked about railroad survey maps your first day in Medicine Bow, before you ever met me." Caleb exhaled, looked at the ground, then looked at her. "His name is Colonel Harlan Webb," he said. "He runs a land development company out of Cheyenne. He hired me to come here and scout the Deer Creek area for a new railroad route. He wants to buy out the small landholders. Buy them out cheap, so the railroad pays top dollar later." The words landed like stones in still water, each one sending ripples through everything Eliza thought she knew. "I took the job before I came to Medicine Bow," Caleb continued. $50 to ride through, look at land, write a report. I did not know who owned the parcels. Did not know anything about you or Noah or any of this." He gestured at the homestead, the cabin he had repaired, the wood he had chopped, the life they had been tentatively building. "After I met you, I lied to Webb. Told him the land was not suitable. Told him the creek was unreliable. I chose your side from the first day." Eliza felt the words try to settle into a shape she could accept. They did not fit. "No," she said quietly. "You chose your conscience. That is a different thing." Caleb flinched. "You kept this from me for months." Eliza's voice was even and cold, the voice she used when she could not afford to feel what was underneath. "You signed a contract with me. You paid my debt. You sat at my table and ate my food and taught my son to drive nails straight. And the whole time you were carrying a secret about why you were really here." "Eliza." Marcus did the same thing. The comparison came out sharp as a blade. "Protected me right into ruin. Made decisions about my life without telling me the truth. You and he are cut from the same cloth, Caleb. The pattern is the same, and I am tired of being the one who does not see it until everything falls apart." That hit him. She could see it land, could see the way his shoulders took the blow. Good. Let it hurt. She was tired of being the only one hurting. "I want you to leave," she said. Caleb went still. "Cancel the partnership?" "No, not yet." She was angry, not stupid. The partnership was legally binding, and she could not afford to throw away the only lifeline she had out of spite. "I need time to think. Go back to May's boarding house. Do not come here until I send for you." Caleb nodded. He went into the lean-to and gathered his few possessions. Before he walked to his horse, he set an envelope on the cabin's porch rail. "Copies of everything," he said. "All my correspondence with Webb, and the letter I wrote telling him I quit." He paused. "I wrote it weeks ago. I just had not sent it yet. Had not sent it." So he had been carrying the escape hatch the whole time, ready to bolt in either direction depending on how things played out. Or maybe he had been building up the courage to burn the bridge. Eliza could not tell which interpretation was true, and the uncertainty was its own kind of wound. Caleb mounted up and rode toward town without looking back. Noah came to the door. "Mama, where is Mr. Rowan going?" "To town for a few days." Eliza pulled her son close and breathed in the smell of his hair and tried not to let him feel her shaking. "Is he coming back?" "I do not know, baby." Noah said nothing, but his small body went rigid against hers, and she could feel the fear running through him like a current. She spent that evening reading Caleb's letters, copies of 2 exchanges with someone whose name appeared only as Webb. The language was businesslike: land parcels, railroad surveys, acquisition strategies. The last letter, the one Caleb said he had not yet sent, read simply, "I refuse the assignment, returning your advance. Do not contact me again." Had not sent it, but had written it. That had to count for something. Did it? The next afternoon, word reached Eliza through May that a new arrival had come to Medicine Bow, a man from Cheyenne, arrived by coach, well-dressed, expensive luggage, took the best room at the boarding house and had been seen dining with Samuel Pritchard at the dry goods store. May came to Eliza at the laundry line, her face drained of color, and spoke in a voice stripped of its usual humor. "That man who just stepped off the coach. I know him. His name is Virgil Crane, and if he is here, nobody is safe, least of all you." "Who is he?" May's jaw tightened. 20 years ago, he ran a house in Cheyenne, not a saloon. The other kind. Used debt to keep his girls trapped. Destroyed anyone who tried to leave. He went respectable after that. Land speculation, legal work, gentlemen's clothes, and gentlemen's manners. But underneath, he is the same animal he always was. That evening, a knock came at the cabin door. Eliza opened it, expecting Caleb. Instead, she found a man she had never seen before standing in the snow. Tall and lean, middle-aged, wearing a city coat that had never seen a day's honest work. His hat was in his hand, his shoes gleamed with polish, and his smile was perfectly calibrated between warmth and threat. "Mrs. Moore, I am Virgil Crane. I represent the legal interests of your late husband's creditors." He paused, letting the words settle. "We need to discuss a debt you do not yet know exists." Behind him the prairie stretched black and endless. The wind carried snow sideways, and Eliza felt the ground beneath her feet give way all over again. There are two kinds of secrets in the West, the ones buried underground and the ones buried in the chest. Both have a way of digging themselves up. Virgil Crane stood in Eliza's cabin like a man accustomed to standing in rooms he did not belong in and making the owners feel like guests. He held his hat and his smile and his silence with equal ease, waiting for Eliza to sit before he spoke. She did not sit. "Say what you came to say, Mr. Crane." Crane inclined his head. "Polite as poison, Mrs. Moore. Your husband Marcus entered into a loan agreement with Webb and Associates in March of 1880. $500 secured against this property. The loan has not been repaid. $500. Eliza's vision blurred at the edges. "I do not know about any such loan." "I understand that must be distressing." Crane reached into his coat and produced a folded document, yellowed with age. "This is the promissory note, bearing your husband's signature. The terms are clear. $500 at 8% interest, due upon demand. We are demanding." He let that settle. Then he smiled again. "Of course we understand your situation. A widow, a small homestead, limited resources. We have no desire to be cruel." He set a second paper on the table. "We are prepared to offer $150 for the property in full settlement. A clean transaction. You walk away free of debt. $150 for 20 acres of prime creek land. It was robbery dressed up in legal paper. And if I refuse, then we pursue the matter through the territorial courts." Crane's voice did not change. "Legal proceedings can be protracted, Mrs. Moore. Expensive, unpleasant, especially for a woman without representation." He gave her 30 days to decide, collected his hat, and left. Eliza stood in the silent cabin. Noah slept in the corner, oblivious. The fire crackled. Wind pressed against the walls. $500. Even with Caleb's partnership, even with the bank debt cleared, $500 was a mountain she could not climb. Her entire savings, everything Marcus had left, everything she had scraped together in 2 years of washing and mending, amounted to maybe $40 hidden in a jar. Then she remembered the envelope. She went to the floorboard, pulled it up, took out the yellowed envelope in Marcus's hand. 2 years of avoidance ended in 60 seconds of tearing paper. His handwriting was hurried, uneven, the writing of a man whose hand shook. "Eliza, if you are reading this, then I am gone and I am sorry. I borrowed $500 from a man in Cheyenne. Webb, his name is. I needed it for cattle. You remember I said I could get a good price on a herd from Jacobson. I did not tell you I needed a loan to do it. The cattle died in the epidemic. All of them. Every last head. And the money was gone and I could not tell you. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could find a way to pay it back before you ever had to know. I always thought I could fix everything. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Please forgive me." Eliza read it twice. Then she set the letter down and cried. Not just for the money, for the realization that Marcus had lived his final months inside a lie, hiding and pretending and slowly drowning while she stood 3 feet away and did not see. The same way Caleb had lied. Different details, same pattern. Men who loved her, or said they did, and protected her by hiding the truth, until the truth became a weapon aimed at her head. She put the letter back in the envelope through tears that would not stop. In her anguish, she did not unfold the pages fully, did not notice that one sheet stuck to another, a second page folded small and pressed flat against the inside of the envelope. The ticking bomb ticked on. The next morning, Noah woke up quiet. He had been quiet since Caleb left, too quiet, eating his meals without chatter, doing his chores without complaint, going to bed without being asked. All the signs of a child carefully holding himself together because he sensed the adults around him were falling apart. It broke at breakfast. Noah sat at the table pushing beans around his plate. Eliza was washing dishes, her back to him, her mind churning through numbers that would not add up and options that did not exist. You sent him away. Noah's voice was small and tight, wound around something about to snap. What, baby? Mr. Rowan. You sent him away. You always send everyone away. Eliza turned. Noah's face was red. His eyes were wet. His small hands gripped the edge of the table. Noah, Papa left, and now Mr. Rowan left, and it is because you will not let anyone stay. The words hit like a slap. Eliza recoiled. Papa did not leave, Noah. Papa died. Same thing. He is gone, and now Mr. Rowan is gone, and we are alone again. And I hate it. Noah was sobbing now, furious, and beneath the fury was raw terror. The same terror Eliza felt every night in the dark, the same terror she worked so hard to hide. Her 6-year-old son had seen straight through her and named the thing she would not name. She went to him, knelt down, pulled him into her arms while he cried, hot, angry tears soaking her shoulder, his small body shaking with the force of feelings too big for his frame. I am sorry, she whispered. I do not want to be alone anymore, Noah said into her neck. I do not want to be hungry anymore. I do not want to be scared. She held him tighter and let his words cut through every wall she had built. Because he was right. She did push people away. Not just Caleb, everyone. The pattern was older than Marcus's death. She pushed because she was afraid, and she was afraid because every person she had ever trusted had left. And if she never let anyone close, then no one could leave her again. But the cost of that safety was a 6-year-old boy crying in her arms, terrified that everyone he loved would disappear. I hear you, she said softly. I hear you, Noah. That afternoon, she took Noah to May's boarding house. Told herself it was for warmth and company. Knew it was because the cabin felt like a cage. May sat them down in her kitchen with hot cider and honey biscuits and listened while Eliza told her about Crane's visit. The old woman's face went hard. I know Crane from the old days, May said. In Cheyenne, he ran a house, used debt to control the girls. If they owed him, they could not leave. If they tried, he destroyed them. He went legitimate 15 years ago. Land, legal work, a respectable name, but a rattlesnake in a suit is still a rattlesnake. She poured more cider. Then she added something else. And you're Mr. Rowan. I finally placed why he seemed familiar. I knew his wife, Emma. Eliza's head came up. She was the daughter of a rancher in Colorado. I passed through on my way west and stayed a season. Emma was a sweet girl, fragile as china in a country that breaks china for sport. She loved Caleb something fierce, but she could not handle frontier life. The loneliness, the hardship. She was drowning even before the fever came. May's eyes were gentle. If Caleb lied to you about his reason for being here, it was not malice. It was a man who has lost everyone he ever loved and is terrified down to his boot heels of losing someone again. That does not make it right, but it makes it human. Before Eliza could respond, Caleb appeared in the doorway. He had heard about Crane's visit from May's hired girl. His face was white. His eyes went to Eliza first, then Noah, checking for damage. "Did you know about the $500 note?" Caleb asked. "No." Eliza's voice was flat. "Did you?" "I swear to God I did not." He stood in the doorway with snow on his shoulders, and the raw honesty in his voice was either the best thing she had heard in months or the most practiced lie she had ever encountered. She could not tell which. "But there is something else," Caleb said. He came into the room, pulled out a chair, sat down like a man bracing for impact. "The contract templates Webb gave me, the ones I was supposed to use for land acquisition. They are the same kind of templates used to draw up that promissory note. Same format, same clauses, same legal language." He looked at the floor. "I did not sign anything, did not know about Marcus's loan. But I was carrying blanks of the same paperwork that was used to trap your husband. I was part of the machine, Eliza, even if I did not know it." The room went silent. May set down her cider. Noah sat very still in his chair, watching the adults with eyes that missed nothing. Then Noah reached over and took Caleb's hand. Just a small boy's hand closing over a man's roughened fingers. No words, no explanation. Just a child deciding, with the simple certainty that children have, that this person was worth holding on to. Caleb looked down at Noah's hand in his. Something in his face broke and reassembled. Eliza watched them. 2 years of walls, 2 years of keeping everyone at arm's length, and her son had just demolished it all in one gesture. She did not reach for Caleb, did not soften her expression. But she said through the door she was about to close between them, "If you want to make this right, prove that note is forged, because I do not have $500. Caleb nodded, stood, looked at Noah one more time, then stepped into the snow. And for the first time in 15 years, he prayed. Not for himself, for the woman behind the closed door, the boy who had taken his hand despite everything, and the chance to tear down the machine he had once been part of, even if it buried him in the wreckage. Caleb Rowan had tracked stray cattle across 200 miles of Texas desert. He had followed hoofprints through sandstorms and across dry creek beds and over ground so hard it did not hold a mark. Tracking was patience and attention, and the refusal to quit even when the trail went cold. Tracking a lie through a system of legal paperwork turned out to be considerably harder. He started at the land office. Mr. Hendricks was cooperative in the way of small-town officials who enjoyed being at the center of important events. He pulled the filing for Marcus Moore's promissory note and spread it on the desk. The document looked official. Good paper, clean handwriting. Marcus Moore's signature at the bottom, dated March 18, 1880. And below it, a witness signature. Samuel Pritchard. Caleb stared at the name. Pritchard. The same man who had refused Eliza credit and publicly humiliated her. The same man who had told her to sell her land. The same man whose eyes had tracked Eliza like prey the afternoon Caleb bought her supplies. Not a coincidence, not even close. But the date was the thing. March 18th, 1880. Caleb remembered something Eliza had told him weeks ago during one of their evening conversations by the fire. Marcus broke 3 ribs that winter. Fell from the roof trying to patch it. She had nursed him for 6 weeks while managing the entire homestead alone. He could not get out of bed, she had said. Could not even roll over without screaming. March 1880. If Marcus was bedridden with broken ribs, he could not have walked into Pritchard's store and signed anything. Caleb needed proof, medical proof. He went to find Doc Whitfield. Doc was drunk. Not falling down drunk, more the steady, low-level drunk of a man who had been pickling himself for years and had reached a kind of equilibrium between functional and destroyed. He sat in his office, which was also his home, which was also a kind of controlled disaster of medical instruments and whiskey bottles and books stacked in towers that defied gravity. "Doc, I need to ask about a former patient." Doc Whitfield looked at Caleb with red-rimmed eyes that were sharper than they had any right to be. "Which patient?" "Marcus Moore." The name hit Doc like cold water. He sat up straighter. Some of the haze cleared. Some of the haze. What about him? Was he bedridden in March of 1880? Doc pulled a leather-bound ledger from a shelf, the kind of careful record that suggested the physician he might have been without the whiskey. He turned pages, found the entry, read it. Marcus Moore. Admitted March 2nd, 1880. 3 broken ribs, right side. Severe bruising to the right arm and shoulder. Confined to bed rest. I visited weekly. He was not ambulatory until mid-April at the earliest. He looked up. "What is this about?" Caleb told him. The promissory note. The signature dated March 18th. Pritchard as witness. Doc's expression went hard. If that note says Marcus signed it at Pritchard's store on March 18th, it is a lie. Marcus could not walk, could not write for that matter. His right arm was useless for weeks. There is a witness signature. Pritchard says he was there when Marcus signed. Then Pritchard is a liar as well as a cheat. Caleb pressed further. Is there anything else? Anything about Marcus that might help? Doc was quiet for a long time. He looked at his whiskey glass, looked at the ledger, looked out the window at the gray sky. Marcus came to see me 2 days before he died, not for his body. Caleb waited. I keep my patients' secrets, Doc said slowly. Even the dead ones. But I will tell you this. If you want to beat Crane, find the weak point in his evidence. If Pritchard is his witness, break Pritchard. The note is only as strong as the man standing behind it. He would not say more. But his eyes, when he looked at Caleb, held something complicated. A man carrying a secret that weighed on him heavy and looking for permission to set it down. Caleb did not push, not yet. He spent the next 2 days building his case. Found Tommy Redfeather at the blacksmith's forge. Tommy was 20 years old, half Shoshone, with the quiet confidence of a young man who had learned to navigate 2 worlds without belonging fully to either. He listened to Caleb's questions with careful attention. My father worked at the livery in 1880, Tommy said. I remember him telling me about a time that spring when Pritchard and a stranger rode out to the Moore place, well-dressed stranger, city clothes. My father noticed because Pritchard never left his store during business hours, and they went out toward Deer Creek, toward the Moore cabin. When was this? Tommy thought. March or April? I cannot swear to the exact date, but it was during the time Marcus was laid up. I know because my father mentioned it seemed strange that Pritchard would visit a man who could not even come to town. So someone went to Marcus, not the other way around. The note said Marcus signed at Pritchard's store. But if Pritchard went to the cabin, the note's own story was wrong. It was not proof beyond question, but it was a crack that could be widened. Then Crane made his move. He called a meeting at May's boarding house. Summoned is more accurate. Eliza received a written notice, formal and cold, requesting her presence to discuss the resolution of debts owed by the estate of Marcus Moore. Caleb received the same. They arrived separately. Eliza would not ride with him, would not look at him. But she came, because the alternative was worse. May's front parlor had been arranged like a courtroom. Chairs in rows, Crane at a table in front. Beside him sat Pritchard, sweating in his good shirt. A bank clerk from the Medicine Bow branch perched on a hard chair looking like he wished he were anywhere else. The whole town seemed to have found reason to be in or near the boarding house that morning. May stood behind her front desk with her arms crossed and her expression murderous. Crane rose when Eliza entered. All courtesy, all polish. He held a chair for her as though this were a dinner party and not an ambush. Mrs. Moore, thank you for coming. I believe we can resolve this matter quickly and amicably. He produced the promissory note, laid it on the table for all to see. $500. Marcus Moore's signature strong and clear, and beneath it, the witness. Mr. Pritchard, Crane said, turning to the shopkeeper, you witnessed Marcus Moore sign this document at your store on March 18th, 1880. Is that correct? Pritchard's eyes darted around the room. Found no escape? That is correct. And you are prepared to swear to that before a judge? I am. Crane turned back to Eliza. His expression was sympathetic the way a cat is sympathetic to a mouse. As I said, Mrs. Moore, $150 for the property. A clean resolution. You have 2 weeks to decide." The room buzzed with whispered conversation. Eliza sat white-faced, her hands still in her lap. After the meeting broke apart, Caleb caught her on the boardwalk. "Pritchard is lying," he said, low and urgent. March 1880. Marcus was flat on his back with broken ribs. "You told me yourself. He could not have walked into that store. He could not have signed anything with his right hand." Eliza looked at him. The first direct look she had given him since she discovered his secret. "I know," she said. "I hauled every bucket of water and fed every chicken and did every lick of work for 6 weeks while Marcus could not even turn over in bed. He was not in that store. Then we can prove it. Doc Whitfield has the medical records. Dates, condition, everything. And Tommy Redfeather's father saw Pritchard ride out to your cabin with a stranger that spring. Someone came to Marcus. Marcus did not go to anyone." Eliza studied him, searching for the lie, for the angle, for the hidden motive she was certain must be there. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you still doing this?" "Because that note is a fraud, and Crane is a thief, and your land belongs to you and Noah, not to some speculator from Cheyenne. That is not what I meant. Why are you still here? You could walk away. Dissolve the partnership. You already spent $200 you will never get back. Why keep fighting for someone who cannot even look at you without thinking about the lie?" Caleb was quiet for a moment. "Because you and Noah are worth fighting for," he said. "Even if you never forgive me. Even if you dissolve the partnership tomorrow and I walk away with nothing. That land is yours. That boy's home is on that land, and I will not let a man like Crane take it." Eliza did not smile, did not soften, but something in her eyes shifted. Not forgiveness, recognition. She turned to go, then stopped. "Caleb." "Yeah? Thank you for not walking away." He looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded once. Sometimes a nod says more than any oath sworn on a Bible. Evidence is like creek water in winter. You know it is there somewhere beneath the ice, but you have to dig in the right spot at the right time before everything freezes solid. Caleb went to Doc Whitfield one more time. "Doc, I need those medical records, dates and condition, written out so a judge can read them." Doc poured himself a drink, looked at it, set it down without drinking. "Crane will take her land," Caleb said. "She and the boy will be on the street." Doc opened his ledger, wrote out a clean copy in his precise physician's hand. "Marcus Moore, seen March 2nd, 1880. Presenting with 3 broken ribs and severe contusion to the right arm and shoulder. Confined to bed rest through April 15th. Patient unable to walk or write during this period." He signed it, sealed it, and handed it to Caleb. Tommy Redfeather's father, a quiet man named Joseph who worked at the livery and trusted his son enough to listen, agreed to provide testimony. He had seen Pritchard and a stranger ride toward Deer Creek in March or April of 1880. He could not swear to the exact date, but the timing was right. It was enough to challenge the note, maybe enough to win. But that night, the fire came. Eliza woke to a sound that did not belong in the dark. High-pitched, panicked, the sound of chickens screaming. She threw off the blanket and opened the cabin door. The chicken coop was burning. Orange light painted the snow in hot streaks. Smoke rose black and thick against the stars. The flames had already consumed one wall and were climbing the roof. Caleb burst from the lean-to before Eliza could shout for him. He ran barefoot across the frozen ground toward the fire, yanking his shirt over his head to use as a beater. Noah appeared in the cabin doorway behind her, crying. "Stay," Eliza commanded. "Do not come out." She ran after Caleb. They fought the fire together, beating flames with blankets, hauling snow in buckets and bare hands. The cold and the heat fought each other across their skin. Sparks flew upward like reverse stars. The chickens screamed until 2 of them stopped screaming. They saved the third. Caleb pulled it from the wreckage with blistered hands, feathers singed and smoking, and cradled it against his chest while it shivered. In the dying firelight, his face was streaked with soot and sweat, his hands raw and bleeding. He looked at Eliza across the ruined coop, and she looked back. And something happened that no amount of anger or betrayal or careful distance could prevent. She knew. With terrifying clarity, standing in the snow with embers falling around them, she knew that what she felt was not gratitude or obligation or the confused attachment of a desperate woman. It was love, specific and undeniable and terrible in its timing. She loved a man who had lied to her, a man she had sent away, a man who came running barefoot through snow to save her chickens. The timing was terrible. The feeling did not care about timing. Caleb found the note nailed to the coop's surviving post. A piece of paper, edges curled from heat. 2 words, 14 days. Crane's deadline delivered in fire. They went inside. Noah was shaking. Caleb wrapped the surviving chicken in a towel and set it by the hearth. Eliza made coffee with hands that would not stop trembling. Then something shifted in Caleb. He boarded up the window nearest the door, checked the rifle's load, walked the perimeter of the cabin 3 times before Eliza had finished her first cup. He came back in and started moving supplies away from the walls, stacking them in the center of the room. He positioned the rifle within arm's reach of every spot in the cabin. "Noah," he said, "no more playing by the creek. You stay in sight of the cabin at all times. You hear hoofbeats, you get inside and bar the door." Noah's eyes went wide with fear. Caleb worked through the next hour like a man building a fortress, nailing boards, moving furniture, planning routes and contingencies, all of it without once asking Eliza what she thought. She recognized what she was seeing. A man who had lost his family once and was trying to control every variable to make sure it never happened again. The impulse was love. The execution was suffocation. Caleb. He was nailing another board across the window. The hammer swung steadily, each blow driving the nail deeper, shutting out more light. "Caleb, stop!" He did not stop. She caught his arm. He turned. His eyes were wild in a way she had never seen, not with anger, with terror, the raw animal terror of a man who smelled fire and heard screaming and was 15 years old in his grief again, coming home to crosses he had not been there to prevent. "Are you protecting us or caging us?" The question stopped him. The hammer lowered. "Because Marcus protected me too," Eliza said, "by hiding the truth and making every decision alone. I will not live like that again." Caleb's hand shook. The hammer dropped. "I cannot lose another family." "Then stop treating us like something to be locked away and start treating us like people who get a say in their own survival." They stood facing each other in the boarded-up cabin with smoke still in their clothes and blisters on their hands, and the truth between them like a living thing. Caleb sat down, put his head in his hands. Noah crept out from behind the table and climbed into his lap without asking permission. Caleb's arms went around the boy automatically, and something in his posture broke and rebuilt. "I am sorry," he said, to both of them. Eliza sat across from him. "We planned this together," she said. "All 3 of us. We face Crane together. No more boarding up windows, no more hiding, no more decisions made alone." Caleb nodded. "The circuit judge arrives in Medicine Bow in 10 days, Eliza said. "We present our evidence and challenge the note. What if it is not enough? It will be enough. It has to be." That night, after Caleb moved back into the lean-to and Noah fell asleep, Eliza could not rest. She went to the floorboard, pulled out Marcus's letter again. She read it through one more time, slowly. And this time, with steadier hands and clearer eyes, she noticed what she had missed before. The pages stuck together. She separated them carefully. A second sheet, smaller. Marcus's handwriting, hurried and uneven. "They came to the cabin when you were in town. Pritchard and another man. Made me sign. Said they would take the land immediately if I did not. Pritchard witnessed, but he did not help me. He watched me sign with my left hand. I could barely hold the pen. Eliza read it 3 times. Left hand. Marcus's right arm had been useless from the broken ribs. If he signed anything, he signed it with his left hand, shaking, barely legible. But the signature on Crane's note was right-handed. Strong. confident. The signature was forged. The answer had been in this envelope since the day Marcus died, under the floorboard, under her feet, waiting 2 years for her to be brave enough to find it. She pressed the letter to her chest and breathed, and felt the weight of the future settle into something she could carry. The night before the hearing, Eliza lay in bed listening to the wind. From the lean-to through the timber wall, Caleb's voice came quiet. "Eliza? What? Tomorrow, whatever happens, you and Noah will be all right, I promise." She closed her eyes. The last time a man had promised her something, he died and left debts. But this time she whispered back, "I believe you," and was startled to find she meant it. The Medicine Bow courtroom was nothing but May Tattersall's dining room with extra chairs, but what would be laid bare inside it today was enough to save or destroy 3 lives. Dawn came early and cold. Eliza was already dressed when the knock came at the cabin door. She opened it, expecting Caleb. Doc Whitfield stood on the porch, sober, clean-shaven, wearing his only good vest, the black one he kept for occasions that mattered. His hands were steady for the first time Eliza could remember. "Mrs. Moore, I need to speak with you. Alone, before the hearing." She stepped outside and closed the door behind her. Noah still slept. The morning was gray and still, the kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. Doc looked at her with eyes that held 2 years of a secret's weight. "I have carried this long enough," he said, "and you deserve to know before you walk into that room today." "Know what?" "Marcus came to see me 2 days before he died. Not for anything physical." Doc's voice was careful, as though each word had to be lifted and placed just so. "He told me he wanted to end things, said the debt was going to take everything, said he could not face you knowing what he had done." The world tilted. Eliza gripped the porch rail. "The horse he rode that morning," Doc continued. "Gentlest animal in the territory. And Marcus was a fine rider, 20 years of practice. That horse did not throw him, Mrs. Moore. I do not believe it for a second." He paused. Let the words settle. "I recorded the death as accidental because I could not prove otherwise, and because a ruling of self-destruction would have meant you could not inherit the land. Wyoming territory does not grant property rights to the families of those who take their own lives. I protected you the only way I knew how." Eliza held onto the railing and breathed. In and out. In and out. The way she had breathed the night they brought Marcus home across his horse, and she stood in the doorway holding Noah and felt the future cave in. 2 years she had believed it was an accident, bad luck, the senseless cruelty of a horse shying at a snake or a rabbit, random and meaningless. Now Doc was telling her it may not have been random at all, that Marcus, drowning in debt he could not pay and shame he could not face, might have chosen to leave her, chosen to leave Noah, mounted that gentle horse and ridden toward the canyon knowing what would happen. Or maybe not. Maybe it was an accident. Doc said he could not prove otherwise, and Eliza knew she would never know for certain. The not knowing was its own kind of wound, but she understood something else too. Marcus had been driven to that edge, not by fate or bad luck, but by Virgil Crane and Samuel Pritchard and the machine that had come to his cabin while his wife was in town, and his ribs were broken and his right arm was useless, and made him sign a paper with his trembling left hand, while Pritchard watched and did nothing. "They killed him," Eliza said quietly. "Maybe not with a gun, but they broke him until he could not stand anymore." Doc nodded. "And you are willing to say this in the hearing? If you want me to." Doc's voice was rough. "But you should know what it means. If I testify about Marcus's state of mind, the whole town will know. Your son will know eventually. There is a stigma to this that will follow you." Eliza looked out at the homestead, the cabin Caleb had repaired, the fields that would be planted in spring, the lean-to where a man who had lied to her slept in the cold because propriety mattered more than comfort. Noah's home was here. His future was here. and protecting a dead man's reputation at the cost of her living son's home was a bargain she refused to make. Say what you need to say, Doc, and I will live with what comes after. The hearing convened at 10 in the morning. May's dining room was packed wall to wall with every soul in Medicine Bow who could find an excuse to be there. The circuit judge, Arthur Graves, sat at May's best table, with the authority of a man who had spent 40 years separating truth from horseshit in the territorial courts. White-haired, sharp-eyed, not a man who suffered fools or tolerated games. Crane sat at a second table, polished and confident, with Pritchard beside him sweating through his good shirt. A clerk from the bank hovered nearby, looking miserable. Eliza sat with Caleb on the opposite side. Not together exactly. Side by side, but not touching. United in purpose, if not yet in trust. Noah sat with May in the back row. May's arm rested across his shoulders. "Your Honor," Crane began, "the matter is straightforward. Marcus Moore signed a promissory note for $500 with Webb and Associates in March of 1880. The note is witnessed by Mr. Pritchard. The debt remains unpaid. We seek either payment in full or forfeiture of the property as outlined in the terms." He presented the note. Graves examined it, turning it over in his hands with the attention of a man who had read 1,000 such documents. "Mr. Pritchard," Graves said, "you witnessed this signature?" Pritchard stood. His collar was too tight and his forehead gleamed. "I did, Your Honor. Marcus Moore signed it at my store on March 18th, 1880. You are certain of the date?" "I am certain." "And Mr. Moore came to your store for this purpose?" "He did." Graves set the note down. "Anyone else wish to speak?" Caleb stood. "Your Honor, I would like to present evidence that contradicts Mr. Pritchard's testimony." Graves nodded. "Proceed." Caleb presented Dr. Whitfield's medical records, read them aloud in a steady voice. "Marcus Moore, admitted March 2nd, 1880. 3 broken ribs, severe bruising to the right arm and shoulder, confined to bed rest through April 15th, unable to walk or write during this period. Your Honor, the note claims Marcus signed it at Pritchard's store on March 18th, but he was bedridden. He could not walk to the store, and his right arm was injured. He could not produce the strong right-handed signature that appears on this document." Pritchard's face went gray. Crane recovered smoothly. "Perhaps Mr. Moore signed at home. Perhaps Mr. Pritchard traveled to the cabin to witness." Eliza stood. She held Marcus's letter, the second page, in her hand. "Your Honor, my late husband left a letter." She unfolded it, read the words in a voice that did not shake, though it cost her everything. "They came to the cabin when you were in town. Pritchard and another man made me sign, said they would take the land immediately if I did not. Pritchard witnessed, but he did not help me. He watched me sign with my left hand. I could barely hold the pen." She set the letter on the judge's table. "My husband's right arm was useless. If he signed anything, he signed it with his left hand. But the signature on that note is right-handed, strong and confident. My husband did not write it. Someone else did." The room held its breath. Graves picked up the note, examined the signature, set it beside Marcus's letter. Even across the room, the difference was visible. The note's signature was bold and even. Marcus's handwriting on the letter was shaky, slanted, the writing of a man in pain using his wrong hand. Eliza continued, and here her education showed, the sharp mind that had learned French from her mother and law from necessity. "Your Honor, the promissory note includes a clause requiring the signer to be of sound body and free will. My husband was neither. He was bedridden with broken ribs and a disabled arm, and he was coerced into signing by men who came to his home while I was absent." Then she called Doc Whitfield. Doc walked to the front of the room, sober, steady, wearing his good vest. He confirmed the medical records. Then, at Eliza's nod, he said the rest. "Marcus Moore was a man driven to the edge by debts he could not pay and threats he could not fight. 2 days before he died, he came to my office and told me he wanted to end everything. He said the debt would take the land and he could not face his wife knowing what he had done. The room went absolutely silent. "I recorded his death as accidental," Doc said, "because I could not prove otherwise, and because a ruling of self-destruction would have cost his widow her land and his son his home under territorial law. I made a choice. I would make it again." In the back row, Noah did not understand all the words, but he felt the weight. May's arm tightened around his shoulders. Crane rose. His polish had cracked. Sweat showed at his temples. "Your Honor, Mr. Rowan himself was employed by Colonel Webb to facilitate land acquisition in this area. He was paid to scout this very property. He is not a disinterested witness. His testimony should be stricken." The room murmured. Crane pressed. "Mr. Rowan accepted $50 from Webb and Associates. He arrived in Medicine Bow as an agent of the very company that holds this note. He is a co-conspirator, not a defender. It was true enough to be dangerous. Caleb had taken the money, had scouted the land." Eliza stood again. "Your Honor." Graves looked at her. "Mr. Rowan disclosed his prior arrangement with Webb voluntarily. He refused the assignment, returned the advance, and has spent the past 3 months investing his own money and labor into this property. If making a mistake and then choosing to correct it makes a man a criminal, then every person in this room stands guilty of something. She was not defending Caleb because she had forgiven him. She was defending him because it was right. Because whatever his failures, he had chosen her side when it cost him everything. The distinction mattered." Graves studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Pritchard. "Mr. Pritchard, you testified that Marcus Moore signed this note at your store." "I did. Yet the medical evidence says he could not walk. The deceased's own letter says you came to his cabin. His wife confirms his right arm was disabled. And the signature on this note does not match the handwriting of a man using his left hand in pain." Pritchard's mouth opened, closed. His eyes found Crane looking for rescue. Crane's face was stone. "I will ask you once more, Mr. Pritchard, and I remind you that perjury in this territory carries severe penalties. Did Marcus Moore come to your store and sign this note freely?" Silence. Long and terrible. "No," Pritchard whispered. "He did not." The room erupted. Graves banged the table. In the settling quiet, Pritchard told the rest. They had gone to the cabin. Crane's predecessor, a man from Webb's company, and Pritchard. They found Marcus bedridden and alone. Told him the bank would take his land unless he signed. Marcus signed with his left hand, barely able to grip the pen. Later, someone redrew the signature in a confident right hand. Pritchard did not know who. He had only done what Crane told him to do. Graves ruled. The promissory note was void, signed under coercion by a man physically incapable of producing the signature on the document with a witness whose testimony had been proven false. The note was fraudulent on its face. Crane was ordered to leave Medicine Bow within 24 hours. Pritchard faced charges of perjury and fraud. The territorial marshal would investigate, and if the grand jury returned an indictment, Pritchard would stand trial and could face time in the Wyoming Territorial Prison in Laramie. Eliza Moore kept her land. Legally. Permanently. But as she stood in May's dining room while the crowd buzzed and Crane gathered his papers with hands that shook with rage, Eliza felt something far from triumph. She felt the weight of what she now knew about Marcus. The truth Doc had carried for 2 years. The possibility that her husband had chosen to leave, driven to that choice by the very men she had just defeated. Victory and grief side by side, the way they always were. Outside, in the first real sunshine of early spring, Eliza stood on Medicine Bow's main street. The same spot where she had stood with an empty basket months ago. The same boardwalk, the same buildings. Everything the same and nothing the same. Caleb waited a few paces away, giving her room. Noah held her hand. "Mama, we won, did we not?" "Yes, baby, we won." But her eyes found Caleb's across the distance between them, and the question needed no words. After everything, the lies and the truth and the cost of both, what was left? And was it enough to build on? Spring in Wyoming does not promise anything. It just opens the door and lets you decide whether to step through or stay behind. The weeks after the hearing passed in a rhythm Eliza had almost forgotten. The rhythm of land waking up, snow melting into creeks that ran fast and brown with good soil, green pushing through the dead grass in tentative spears, mornings that smelled of thawing earth and possibility. Eliza visited Marcus's grave on a Tuesday, a quiet morning with nobody watching. She stood before the simple wooden marker and read his name and the dates that bracketed a life she was only now beginning to understand. She had brought the letter. Both pages. She read them one final time, then spoke to the ground where he lay. "You should have told me. We could have fought it together. But you chose alone, the way you always chose. And you left me to survive what you could not face." She paused. The wind moved through the churchyard grass. "I am angry, Marcus. I may always be angry. But I know they pushed you to the edge. And I know you loved us, even if your love was not enough to make you stay." She folded the letter, put it in her pocket. It would not go back under the floorboard. It would stay with her until she decided what to do with it, and that decision was hers alone. "Goodbye, Marcus." She walked away from the grave and did not look back. At the homestead, Caleb worked the fields. He had been working them since the hearing, every day from dawn until his hands were raw. Not speaking much, not pushing, not asking for anything. Just present, just steady. The way he had been from the beginning beneath the lie. He and Noah had fallen back into easy rhythm. The boy followed him through the fields, learning to read the soil, to judge when ground was ready for planting, to walk the creek bank and spot where water would pool in spring rain. Noah's questions were endless, and Caleb answered every one. The surviving chicken had hatched an egg. Noah found the chick on a morning when frost still edged the grass, a tiny ball of yellow fluff peeping in the straw. "Look, Mama." He carried it to Eliza, cupped in both hands, his face radiant. "It is so little, but it is alive." Eliza took the chick and felt its heartbeat against her palm, fast and fierce and entirely new. "Yes," she said, "it is alive." That afternoon she walked out to the field where Caleb was plowing. He worked behind the mule, guiding the blade through earth that had not been properly turned in 3 years. His shirt was dark with sweat. His sleeves were rolled past his elbows, and the sun caught the scars on his forearms, marks from years of rope and wire and the honest damage of living hard. Eliza sat on the fence rail at the field's edge and waited for him to reach the end of the furrow. He saw her, stopped the mule, walked over. They looked at each other across the turned earth. "I have been thinking," Eliza said, "about Marcus, about you, about honesty. And?" Marcus hid the truth because he was weak. She said it without cruelty, as fact. "You hid it because you were afraid of losing what you were building. Both wrong, but different." She paused. "And you did something Marcus never managed. When the lie was found, you stood and faced it instead of running." Caleb leaned against the plow. "I do not deserve easy forgiveness. This is not easy. This is 4 months of winter, a lawsuit, a fire, and more sleepless nights than I can count." She allowed a small smile, the first he had seen from her in weeks. "But the result is this. I choose to trust you. Not because you are perfect, because every day since I found out, you chose to stay and repair instead of disappear." Caleb's eyes were bright. "I will keep choosing that. Every day. If you will let me. There is one condition. Name it. Eliza. Call me Eliza. It has been too long since you stopped saying Mrs. Moore." He looked at her, the weathered face, the steady eyes, the woman who had survived everything the world threw at her and was still standing, still fighting, still choosing to build instead of tear down. "Eliza," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like the beginning of something. Spring turned to summer. They planted corn and beans and potatoes and wheat. Caleb traded work for seed stock and borrowed a second mule for the heavy plowing. Eliza managed the planning, tracking rotations and timing with the sharp mind that had always been her greatest asset. Noah learned to ride, not on the mule, which was too stubborn, but on the buckskin, which Caleb trusted enough to let a 6-year-old sit on its back while Caleb held the lead rope and walked alongside. The boy's face the first time the horse moved under him was pure joy. They read together in the evenings. Caleb could read, had taught himself on the trail, but books had been scarce in his life. Eliza shared the few volumes she had saved from the St. Louis days. She read aloud while Caleb mended tack and Noah practiced letters. The cabin filled with words and lamplight, and the particular kind of peace that comes from people choosing to be in the same room. Small moments accumulated. The morning Caleb left coffee made before Eliza woke because he thought she could use extra sleep. The afternoon she mended his good shirt and added a line of careful stitching along the collar that served no purpose except to be beautiful. The evening Noah fell asleep between them on the porch, and they sat in the silence that follows a good day, needing nothing more. Autumn came. The fields turned gold. Harvest exceeded everything they had hoped. The corn stood tall and heavy. The beans filled bushel after bushel. The wheat bent under its own weight. They worked dawn to dusk for 2 weeks, bringing it in. Caleb and Eliza and Noah, the boy carrying what he could and running between them with the energy that only children and good feeding can produce. By the time they finished, the storeroom was full and the surplus was loaded on a wagon for market. They sold it in Medicine Bow, earned enough to put real money away for the first time. Not fortune, not wealth, but security. The kind of money that meant next winter they would not wonder where the next meal was coming from. "We did it," Eliza said, counting coins at the kitchen table that night. "We actually did it." "We did," Caleb agreed. Evening on the porch he had built, the sky doing impossible things with color as the sun went down. Noah chasing fireflies in the yard, his laughter bright and clean in the cooling air. Caleb reached into his pocket and brought out something small. A ring, not gold, brass forged by Tommy Redfeather at the smithy, engraved with a cottonwood branch, the tree that lined Deer Creek, the tree whose wood Caleb had split that first afternoon when he was a stranger, and Eliza was a woman with an empty basket and nothing left but pride. Not gold, he said, but real, like us. He turned it in his fingers. "Marry me, Eliza. Not for the contract, not for the land, because every morning I wake up and the first thing I need is to know you and Noah are safe. And I want that feeling for the rest of my life." She looked at the ring, at the fields glowing gold in the last light, at Noah's small figure darting through the fireflies like he was trying to gather enough light to hold. "Yes," she said. They were married on a Saturday in the small whitewashed church where Marcus was buried in the yard. May Tattersall served as maid of honor, wearing her best dress, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief she insisted was for a dust allergy. Tommy Redfeather rang the bell. Doc Whitfield arrived sober and steady in his good vest. Mrs. Henderson came carrying a basket of preserves and an apology Eliza accepted with grace. Noah stood between them at the altar. "Can I sign my name as witness?" The minister smiled. "You certainly can." Noah wrote his name in the register carefully, forming each letter with the precision Caleb had taught him. Eliza watched and noticed that her son shaped his R the same way Marcus used to, a detail only a mother would catch. The loop at the top, the firm downstroke. Marcus's hand in his son's letters, a ghost in the ink. She smiled, but her eyes went wet. Caleb saw. He rested his hand on her shoulder, did not speak, did not need to. The gesture said everything. Marcus is still here, in the handwriting, in the memory, in the boy. New happiness does not erase old loss. It builds beside it. They drove the wagon home through the golden afternoon, past the livery, past the land office, past Pritchard's store, which was still open. The investigation was ongoing, and the territorial marshal had taken statements, but justice in the territories moved slowly, and conviction was not certain. Pritchard had not been locked up. He had not been run out of town. But as they passed, Pritchard stood in his doorway and looked away. The exact gesture, the same turning of the head, the same sliding of the eyes, that the whole town had once aimed at Eliza when she walked out of his store with an empty basket and a burning face. The roles had reversed without thunder or miracle. Just the quiet shift of a man who knew his neighbors saw him clearly now and could not bear the weight of their sight. Eliza did not gloat, did not even look at him long. She had bigger things to hold. In her lap sat the wicker basket, the same basket she had carried into Pritchard's store that November morning when the whole world was empty and cold and without mercy. May had filled it with wild flowers picked from the roadside. Purple aster and goldenrod and late-blooming sage, colors so bright they looked painted against the old wicker. Not flour, not beans, not the currency of survival. Flowers. The currency of a life that had room for beauty again. Noah reached over to help her hold it. "Mama, the basket is heavy." Eliza leaned her head against Caleb's shoulder. The wagon rocked gently on the road to Deer Creek, where the water still ran clear, and the cabin stood solid in 20 acres of land that the whole world had tried to take now belonged to 3 people who had chosen each other. "Yes," she said. "Yes, it is." The wicker basket was never empty again. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.